Chuck Schumer have done to help since Donald Trump was elected? Now, Nancy Pelosi tries to fire back at the president, tweeting out, quote, "at real Donald Trump." Well, he now knows that his verbal abuse, you're going to call that verbal abuse, will no longer be tolerated. His empty chair photo op showed he's more interested in stunts than in addressing the needs of the American people. Poor Ryan and McConnell relegated to props. Sad. So Nancy Pelosi is actually saying tonight that President Trump, what he did is a political stunt. What about the fact that she and Schumer, what they pulled today, they wouldn't show up to have a meeting to fund your government? That is the ultimate political stunt. The president's responding by tweeting back after North Korea and their missile launch. It's more important than ever to fund our government and military. Democrats shouldn't hold troop funding hostage for amnesty and illegal immigration. I ran on stopping illegal immigration and won big. They can't threaten a government shutdown to get their demands. Now, what's even more hypocritical is Pelosi and Schumer want everyone to feel sorry for them because President Trump hurt their widow feelings. Now, Pelosi and Schumer forgot all about all the horrible things. We'll remind them tonight that their fellow Democrats and the media have been saying about Donald Trump for 10 months and longer. You may remember this.
His motives and his actions are contemptible, and I will fight every day until he is impeached 45.
I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America.
The President's decision to end DACA was heartless and it was brainless.
We all agree that President Trump's decision to end DACA is a despicable act of political cowardice.
Are we getting closer and closer to the possibility of yet another impeachment process?
After watching the Clinton impeachment, I thought I'd never see another one. But I think we're in impeachment territory now for the first time.
President Trump did a tweet last night and a tweet this morning. Not presidential.
The president's fitness for office is something that is being called into question. I'm very worried about his fitness.
Yeah, really? All those are just examples. They're just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Democrats trashing the president. They do it every day. They've called him every name in the book and then some. And Democrats and their irrational hatred for the president is unlike anything we've ever seen in modern political history. And that's not including the liberal mainstream media that has been trying to destroy President Trump since he launched his campaign. So Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they can try and play the victim all they want and act like petulant little children. All they want in this case, but in reality, they're just feigning moral outrage like they always do. Now, when it comes to negotiating a budget, if Democrats want to play games, if you're refusing to even come to the bargaining table, then guess what? You'll own the government shutdown. And from what the president said today, it sounds like he is not going to be backing down to accommodate your ridiculous demands, and he shouldn't back down. Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they're going to try and pressure Republicans to go along with every liberal agenda item from DACA on down. The American people don't want it. They want to blackmail President Trump and the Republicans into literally breaking their campaign promises. That would be stupid. Now, Democrats are also going to try and deploy their government shutdown scare tactics like they always do. The GOP, for once, you shouldn't budge an inch. Let them own it. The government, by the way, never really ends up shutting down, despite the threat, the lies Democrats have been telling over the years. Guess what? If they do have a, quote, government shutdown, Social Security checks, they still go out. The post office still delivers mail. Food stamps, well, that's not impacted. The executive branch, they still operate. The judiciary branch, they function. Congress, they pretty much go on like nothing happened. The only people that are directly impacted are non-essential government employees. And guess what they get? They get a furlough, which means they end up getting a paid vacation because historically, Congress has always retroactively paid their salaries and they got all the free time off. Republicans need to show spine and backbone for once, please, and actually start fighting for the president's agenda and for the forgotten men and women in this country, you know, the people that actually voted you into power. And if Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they want to go out and cry, they want to suck their thumb in a corner, then so be it. The GOP needs to stop folding under pressure. Start actually keeping your promises. Start leading. Now, the budget is a great place to start, so get to work. Now, also tonight, the U.S. and the world are facing an escalating threat from Rocket Man himself,
what a
Kim
story
Jong-un,
at the White
after
House
his
today.
rogue regime
The optics, as they like to say in D.C.
What the Pentagon believes to be a new ICBM test. This missile flew over 600 miles, was in the air for almost 50 minutes. It flew 2,800 miles into space, which is higher than any previous launch from North Korea before landing in the ocean near Japan. Now, Japan's prime minister has ordered an emergency cabinet meeting and says the missile could have landed in his country's exclusive economic zone. South Korea responding by holding a National Security Council meeting and also conducting a precision strike drill by firing their own missile into the ocean as their show of force. And Hawaii tonight, well, they began testing nuclear attack warning sirens. Now, it's the first time that state has done that in nearly 30 years. President Trump also weighed in on what is now a clear and present danger. That is the growing North Korean threat that took place earlier today. Take a look.
A missile was launched a little while ago from North Korea. I will only tell you that we will take care of it. We have General Mattis in the room with us, and we've had a long discussion on it. It is a situation that we will handle.
And Secretary of Defense General James Mad Dog Mattis addressed the situation as well. Let's watch.
A little over 2.5 hours ago, North Korea launched an intercontinental ballistic missile. It went higher, frankly, than any previous shot they've taken. It's a research and development effort on their part to continue building ballistic missiles that could threaten everywhere in the world, basically. But the bottom line is it's a continued effort to build a ballistic missile threat that endangers world peace, regional peace, and certainly the United States.
Now, with North Korea, we're getting to a point I had hoped we'd never reach. Pyongyang's dangerous nuclear ambitions are now progressing at a very rapid pace. And as you just heard Secretary Mattis say, the missile fired today went higher than any other previous test and now can reach any place in the world. That means a North Korean ICBM could be capable of hitting the continental United States, destroying major American cities like New York and Boston, Los Angeles, Chicago. Tens of millions of American lives now are in danger, not to mention the hundreds of millions that are being threatened in South Korea and Japan. And Kim Jong-un has created a situation that the United States and the world can no longer ignore. And right now, we're getting to the point where force might very well be necessary, because clearly this little crackpot dictator, Kim Jong-un, is not interested in stopping his missile tests. Now, the way I see it, America and the world have only a few options going forward, none of them good, in order to stop North Korea from reaching full nuclear program capability. We either next have to destroy the next North Korean missile test on the launch pad, shoot it out of the air after it's been fired. And if that doesn't stop North Korea, then we could attack and try and destroy the nuclear sites. But that comes with massive risks and huge uncertainties. What if we're not successful? What we now know is not working. The approach that is taken by Democrats, appeasers like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. They tried to appease North Korea. It has failed miserably, as appeasement always does. And in 1994, the Clinton administration, remember, they tried to bribe Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il. They gave North Korea $4 billion in energy aid in exchange for a promise that the rogue regime would freeze and eventually end their nuclear weapons program. A lot of good that did. At that time, Clinton went on national TV bragging about how his bribery worked and was such a good deal for it's a good deal for the American people. Remember this.
This is a good deal for the United States. North Korea will freeze and then dismantle its nuclear program. South Korea and our other allies will be better protected. The entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons. South Korea, with support from Japan and other nations, will bear most of the cost of providing North Korea with fuel to make up for the nuclear energy it is losing. And they will pay for an alternative power system for North Korea that will allow them to produce electricity while making it much harder for them to produce nuclear weapons. The United States and international inspectors will carefully monitor North Korea to make sure it keeps its commitments. Only as it does so will North Korea fully join the community of nations.
None of what you heard was true. It all turned out it was a terrible deal with North Korea. Your tax dollars at work. Bill Clinton, completely wrong. And it has now led us to where we are tonight, in this situation we now find ourselves in. Democrats and the left, I'll never get it, obsessed with sucking up to murderous, radical dictators and despots. They're more willing to bend over backwards for people like Kim Jong-un and his father, Kim Jong-il. But guess what? History has proven over and over again it never works. We saw what happened with Neville Chamberlain and Adolf Hitler. His appeasement policies, well, that cleared the way for Germany's invasion of Europe. Bill Clinton throwing billions at North Korea led us to where we are today. And if anything happens, the blame will fall right at the feet of Bill Clinton and his stupidity and his ignorance and his belief in a fantasy that despots listen to him. And by the way, this led to the situation and the foundation of where we are today. And the same goes with President Obama's disastrous nuclear deal with Iran. This will come back to bite us. Obama giving Tehran and the mullahs upwards of $150 billion. Obama allowing that rogue regime to keep spinning their nuclear centrifuges and put them on a path towards getting a nuclear weapon. As a result, Obama now owns that terrible decision to appease a country that routinely calls for death to America, wants to wipe Israel off the map. And before we bring in Kellyanne Conway for reaction, two other breaking news stories to tell you about. One, Catherine Herridge is out with an explosive report. Take a look at the headline. Blowback. Clinton campaign plan to fire me over email probe, Obama Intel watchdog says. And the former intelligence community inspector general who played a key role in the Clinton email investigation is now saying that Clinton allies literally threatened him, his family, and his staffers. And the Clinton campaign also made it be known that this inspector general would be fired if Hillary, in fact, won in 2016. Also, finally, tonight, a major development in the Uranium One scandal. The Hill's John Solomon out with a brand new report. Here's that headline. Clinton's understated support from firm hired by Russian nuclear company. According to Solomon, he'll join us later. The Clinton Foundation may have significantly underreported the donations they got from a company with deep ties to Russia. More later. But first, joining us now with reaction, counsel to the president, Kellyanne Conway. If the president of the United States of America invites the opposition party to the White House and wants to avoid a government shutdown, shouldn't they have the decency to show up for that meeting instead of the stunt that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer showed today?
In a word, yes, they should, because they're not there representing the opposition party. They're there as the minority leaders of the two chambers in Congress. And it is a major disappointment, especially when you see the president's reaction in North Korea firing its highest missile to date, Sean. He's saying, let's not play politics with funding our military and keeping us strong, and let's not leave that on the altar of a liberal agenda. I find it really regrettable that Nancy Pelosi took time out of her Sunday schedule to go and call John Conyers an icon, and yet is name-calling our president.
And a right to due process.
And that's right, but I want to say today was a great example as to why Donald Trump and his party prevailed and why the other party has failed. It's based on ideas and bedrock principles. The president and his party today through the Senate Finance Committee, they forged ahead and they got this tax bill passed out of committee. It's a great step forward to making sure that our job creators get a lower rate. You know, the president just had a 5-nation Asia trip. In the 5 nations that President Trump visited, guess which one has the highest corporate tax rate among them all? Us, the United States of America. That is completely unacceptable. And it's this president who's trying to work with both parties and both chambers in Congress, Sean, to make sure that this job creators tax rate is lowered, make sure the middle class gets a tax break they deserve, repatriate the $1 trillion worth of wealth, and just simplify the code. Why are we spending billions of dollars and billions of hours every single year trying to comply with the code? So he's making good on promises. I also think he was very respectful of the process today, saying to the senators, listening to their concerns. You have a few of them coming forward and talking about small businesses and what the relief they'll get. The president has listened very patiently to those concerns. Others are talking about the deficit. And so he went to the Senate today to say thank you for working through the process, encouraging them to come forward, bring their concerns to reconciliation, and get this tax cut on his desk. The Democrats have spent all of 2017 talking about the presidential election in 2016 and the presidential election in 2020.
Name one thing they've done?
I can't.
Name one policy?
I can't. And I wish I could tell you it were differently.
Their economic plan was $10 trillion more in new spending and $11 trillion in new taxes.
That's right. That's why they're the minority party there, Sean. That's why they lost 1,000 seats in state legislatures, in the House, in the Senate, in the governorships, and, of course, the biggest prize of all, the White House. It's based on the policies. Donald Trump and Mike Pence prevailed on policies, and they're trying to make good on those. But the Democratic Party has been reduced to carrying around a stop sign. Their code word is resistance, and that's all they're doing, including today. And the people see that. I travel this country weekly for the White House, and I don't go to curated Republican audiences. I'm out in manufacturing plants. I'm talking to small business owners. I have no idea what these people's politics are. I don't much care.
I can tell you what it is. Hate Trump and Russia, Russia, Russia. That's about all you.
But that's right. That's it.
And feigning outrage after they call the president every name in the book.
Yes.
All right. We're at a
But people are really supporting this president. They want to see. They appreciate the fact that on North Korea, he and the UN and Ambassador Haley have gotten 15-0, 2 consecutive unanimous votes to sanction North Korea. She's hosting another meeting tomorrow about this urgency, and the economic and diplomatic isolation of North Korea will continue if they continue to do this. This is the president showing leadership, but the Democratic Party is talking about presidential elections instead of passing policy. And I'm telling you, the American people see it to a person. Even folks who didn't vote for this president come up and tell us all the time. They can't stand the constant negativity, resistance, lies, and the rest of all the blather. They want a government that functions, and he's leading the way.
I don't see with North Korea, and again, I would not be privy to whatever new weaponry that our Defense Department and our military have probably designed in recent years. And I assume there are a lot of secrets, and I'm hopeful there are, because on paper, responding to North Korea as they fire missiles over Japan and into Japanese waters, as they threaten Guam and Hawaii, it's going to get to the point where the options are not good. Take it off the pad, take it out of the sky, and we don't know what this madman will do. Then we take out the nuclear sites. You got to worry about nuclear fallout. You got to worry about, do they have a missile site that we don't know about firing into South Korea or Japan or Guam or Hawaii or the continental United States. So I would say, as he now is precipitating us and pushing us to the brink, there's not a lot of good options, and a lot of people will die. Will China play the role they should play?
Well, this president certainly has forged an improved relationship with the president of China from the beginning, particularly on the matter of North Korea, trying to work together to contain this. North Korea is everybody's problem, and anybody who doubted that saw that today. This president, in bringing on board and talking to Japan and China and South Korea, and again, our UN, the UN Security Council, voting twice unanimously in an unprecedented fashion to sanction North Korea, shows that the world is responding to Donald Trump's leadership as president and commander-in-chief. Sean, he inherited a big mess with North Korea and in many other places. But if you can show one big distinction between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, there were many.
All right, last question.
Everything, all national security, foreign policy, they were different, and his ideas prevailed.
He assured us he had a deal, and he used American taxpayer dollars to bribe Kim Jong-un's father. Are you confident after the meeting today, or more confident, that the Senate, that has really been fairly ineffective, that they'll actually get this tax bill across the finish line?
We're confident. We're optimistic. And we certainly hope that Democrats will come aboard, too. They may not be votes 49, 50, 51. But hopefully those who are in states that are where people are suffering and the middle class needs a break, that they'll come on board as well. But we're hopeful because we've been listening to those concerns, and we know that those senators know they have an open line to the president and to his economic team to express themselves, talk to the vice president. And they've all promised what Donald Trump has promised, which is tax cuts for their constituents. And Sean, let me make clear, this is not important to Republicans or to the Senate. It's important to the American people. We're here for the job creators, the job seekers, and the job holders.
They're supposed to serve them. They're supposed to serve the forgotten men and women. in poverty, on food stamps, and out of work. Kellyanne, great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, on this busy breaking news night, when we come back, an investigative report. The Hill's John Solomon just released yet another major story on the Uranium One scandal. You'll hear it right here first, along with Sarah Carter. And then later, more bad news for Democrats today. Another woman has come forward accusing Congressman Conyers of sexual misconduct. We'll talk about that double standard and Sebastian Gorka and more straight ahead. Clinton Foundation may have significantly underreported donations that it received from a firm with deep connections to Russia and its nuclear energy holdings. Now, this according to a brand new article from the Hill's John Solomon and Allison Spann. Now, this was released earlier tonight. The report details, quote, the Clinton Foundation's donor disclosure site vastly understated support that the Clinton Global Initiative received from APCO Worldwide, a global communications firm that lobbied on behalf of Russia's state-owned nuclear company. Now, we reached out to APCO for a statement. They gave us the same one that they gave the Hill. The executive chairwoman of APCO said, quote, APCO Worldwide activities involving client work on behalf of 10X and the Clinton Global Initiative were totally separate and unconnected in any way. All activities on these two unconnected activities were appropriate, publicly documented from the outset, and consistent with regulations and the law. Any assertion otherwise is false, unfounded, and a lie. Here with more, the Hill's John Solomon, investigative journalist Sarah Carter is with us. John, let's start with, okay, underreported donations received from a firm with deep connections to Russia and the nuclear energy holdings. Did that happen or not?
It definitely happened. APCO acknowledges it gave $1 million in what is known as in-kind pro bono services to the Clinton Global Initiative. The Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation only disclosed $50,000 of cash payments that were made by APCO. The other million plus has not been disclosed until we learned about it from our records. We also know that the FBI undercover informant, according to his lawyer, Victoria Tensing, is prepared to tell Congress that the Russians told him they picked APCO specifically because of the Clinton connections, and that they expected APCO's support for the Clinton Foundation to go up.
Specifically.
They picked APCO specifically, and that they expected APCO's support for the Clinton Foundation to go up after Russia hired them. We're going to wait and see if he actually says that to Congress, but that's what his lawyer's saying. I think it's a fairly significant development.
And this is before CFIUS and the board and the 9 separate government agencies, including state and the Attorney General, signed off on it, right?
Yeah, now remember, APCO was hired to do another part of lobbying. They weren't working on Uranium One. They were working on helping the Russian government win billions of new uranium contracts in the United States. Uranium One was a separate deal, part of the same strategy, but they were working very differently on something that turned out to be much more valuable, billions of dollars of new utility contracts in the United States that were authorized by Barack Obama.
All right, Sarah, let's go to the money side of this. And you know the FBI informant, and you've discussed some of these things with him. 2 things that are important here. One is follow the money. Number 2 is the timing of the donations. Let's put those 2 together and couple it with John's new report. Where did all of this money, the $145 million that Peter Schweitzer talked about, come from, and what was the timing based on the activities as it relates to Uranium One, CFIUS, and the Clinton Foundation?
Well, we certainly know, Sean, there's been a number of concerns here. I mean, from the $145 million, which came from members of the board that were connected to Uranium One. And if I want to go back just really quick, because the APCO story is very important, they signed that contract in April of 2010. So that was before the CFIUS process went through later that October. So this was very important, and the informant made that very clear to his attorney, and John's 100% right on that. It's something that he's expected to testify to. So let's go back now to the money. Look at the money trail. How did they move this money? Where was the money moved to? How did it get into the Clinton Foundation? This is the reason why a special counsel or a prosecutor, an investigator, needs to look into this. And right now we know that there's 4 different committees on the Hill looking into this. There is the Judiciary Committee, the Oversight Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. So this is a very serious, expansive investigation. It's going to require somebody with the know-how and capability to find it.
Follow up then, because the FBI informant knew about Putin's plans to get a foothold in the uranium market. By the way, we need uranium. Allowing someone to control it is beyond stupid. But bribery, kickbacks, extortion, money laundering. Is there evidence of any money laundering. In other words, the people in Canada, the Frank Gusters of the world and others, is there any evidence? Where did they get all these millions to donate to the Clinton Foundation? And is there any chance that money was laundered and funneled to the foundation?
I absolutely think that once an investigation gets started, they may find some of that evidence. Now, I don't want to sit here and say definitively that they will.
But it's an open question now.
But it is an open question now. And so now we're looking at a couple of issues here. We know that money was laundered through banks in Cyprus, particularly Alpha Bank. There was Latvia. There was the Seychelles. There's a lot of evidence out there. And one thing that's very important, Sean, here is that the informant is going to be able to show that he was actually providing evidence to the FBI and the Justice Department long before CFIUS voted on this, showing how much Russia wanted to penetrate the U.S. energy market. And John's absolutely right on one point. In fact, it was way beyond Uranium One. It was $6.5 billion or more of U.S. energy.
John, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, listen, I think we focus so much on Uranium One because that's where this story started in 2015, but it's only one piece of a larger puzzle. And you take a look at what Barack Obama administration, Hillary Clinton's own State Department helped approve and get through. It's a much larger giveaway to the Russian uranium industry. And here's, I think, the most important thing about today. Large parts of the story that Hillary Clinton and her defenders have given the media have now been proven wrong. Let's go through some of them. There was no reason not to reject the Uranium One deal. There was. The FBI had evidence of criminality by the very buyer of Uranium One. All of the donations were disclosed. They weren't all disclosed. There was lots of concern inside the FBI about where the money was coming from, and that we really not had a full airing about that. And my favorite one, it was repeated on Shep Smith's show just a couple weeks ago on Fox, that no uranium left the United States. Uranium One did export American uranium out of the United States after Russia bought it.
To Canada, Europe, and maybe even Asia?
That's right, and that's according to Uranium One. That's not us, that's Uranium One. The three key defense points that have been put out there by the Clinton defenders are now been proven false, not by anonymous stuff, by documents and by true reporting. And I think that that's one of the things that is most important about today's story. One of the key pillars is not true.
We all know more about this story than we're telling. And I can only say to our audience that has been following this with you, stay tuned, TikTok. I think you'll both agree with that. Thank you. Great work, both of you. When we come back, Democrats' sexual harassment problems are far from over. We're going to tell you about the latest accusations against Congressman Conyers and the defense by his liberal colleagues. And later, North Korea's ICBM launch earlier today is now a game changer. We have a live update. Ed Henry is in Washington. Sebastian Gorka has reaction. That and much more straight ahead. Congressman Conyers of sexual misconduct. According to reports, this accuser served as Conyers' deputy chief of staff between 1997 and 2005. She claims Conyers touched her inappropriately on at least 3 occasions, including one time when she says Conyers placed his hands under her dress. We've reached out to Conyers' office for comment on this woman's claims, but they have yet to respond to our request. And also over the weekend, political commentator Cokie Roberts made this startling comment about Conyers' reputation on the Hill. This is pretty shocking. Watch this.
I mean, the culture of Capitol Hill for so many decades was men being bad. We all talked about for years.
A little bit at a time.
Well, you know, don't get in the elevator with him, you know, and every female in the press corps knew that, right? Don't get in the elevator with him. Now people are saying it out loud, and I think that does make it.
That is a change.
Here with reaction, former Obama economic advisor Austin Goolsbee, co-host of the hit show The Five, Kimberly Guilfoyle. All right, Austin, so what are people to do? What is the right thing to do? Because we see a lot of hypocrisy. For 30 years, a lot of your Democratic friends, they were part of a smear, slander, besmirching attack against all the Clinton women. And by the way, it ends up he was a predator. But they did it for 30 years. In the case of politics, some people say, Nancy Pelosi, well, John Conyers now deserves due process. But nobody gave Roy Moore due process when he denied the allegations, serious as they were. What is the right thing to do here?
Well, look, this doesn't look too good for Congressman Conyers. I mean, he's already been forced to resign his position on the Judiciary Committee.
Not forced, he said voluntarily. Do you not believe him?
He's resigning from his position, and I think the right thing to do here is to investigate and take these people's story. And if we've got situations where members of Congress are reaching settlements where they're paying people not to tell their stories, and that's at taxpayer expense, I think that's crazy. I think that's crazy.
Right? Pay with your own money.
Absolutely. I think it's just such a miscarriage of justice, and it's a gross misappropriation of taxpayer funds that the hardworking men and women of this country have to pay for the misdeeds, the sexual misconduct, the sexual harassment of members of Congress that then get to continue in office and sweep it under the rug and pretend to serve the people when they're really serving themselves and asking someone else to pay for their sins. I mean, it's totally inappropriate, and I don't know why Nancy Pelosi would go out on a limb like this, Austin, and try to defend this man and say that he's iconic and say that he is someone who is a champion of women when it's far from the truth.
Austin?
Well, I was agreeing with you all the way until the very end.
Okay.
And it is outrageous, and they should make public whoever received this kind of money and made these settlements, no matter what party they're in, they should reveal that information, and those people should be punished. Now, to try to turn this, if there is a double standard, the double standard thus far has been, though small, there have been some consequences to the Democrats. In Roy Moore's case, there have been no consequences. In the president's case, there have been no consequences. So I think we should either apply consequences to everyone and investigate all of them, or, well, that's what we should do.
Well, right.
I don't think the sweeping it under the rug is the right thing.
Yeah, well, as a former prosecutor, I'm all for due process and actually determining the facts and the truth of what transpired. But how about people like Congress who have settled cases and admitted wrongdoing and, in fact, have agreed that they have done these misdeeds? That is a very different case from somebody who contests it and still hasn't adjudicated it or determined, in fact, what happened, especially when it's over a long period of time in the past. So that, to me, is a distinction with a difference that should be observed and paid attention to.
What about Franken?
Yes, but it doesn't mean we should ignore. You know, if in Roy Moore's case, he's accused of really felony pedophilia as well as other very serious crimes. And we should look into that. We shouldn't just say because he said he didn't do it, therefore we shouldn't pursue it.
Well, no one's saying not to look into it, but he's entitled to have that actually investigated and determined. I mean, how can you do that in a quick period of time?
But that goes for John Conyers too, though, right? I mean, I'm even saying
cases like this. If you were to bring a case like this in front of the district attorney's office, etc., if there was a case of sexual misconduct or sexual assault of a criminal level, you would actually get a jury by your peers, and you would get a full and thorough investigation. And you don't see that in a lot of these cases. A wide spectrum of conduct, and sometimes in some of the cases, we see an accusation is enough to, in fact, convict someone essentially without due process. But the bottom line,
Austin, is the Democratic Party defended the predatory behavior of Bill, and they did everything they could do to slander every woman in that case. Drag $100 through a trailer park. You don't know what you're going to find. So many examples.
Look, I don't think they should be proud if that's what they did. They shouldn't be proud of it. And when Republicans defended Clarence Thomas, they shouldn't be proud of that either. Now, the question is today, what are we going to do?
Clarence Thomas to Bill Clinton? Clarence Thomas was
I'm
one
saying
accuser
there are many cases. They should. I'm not going to defend if that's what they did. They should be embarrassed by that behavior. The question is, today, what should we do?
30 years,
and I think you and I agree, Sean, and Kimberly agrees, we should go after finding out this information.
Okay, so you agree that in the case of Bill Clinton, they should have handled that better. They shouldn't have smeared the women and actually
I think they should have handled it better, and I think they should be embarrassed by the way they handled it.
It's so convenient now that the Clintons have no power because they all the liberals defended him up until and including
I wasn't
last year.
I wasn't in the administration.
Okay, yeah, okay. You don't read a newspaper either, and you don't watch my show, so you know nothing about it.
But he's on your show a lot.
Yeah. All right.
I have a football that's you signed that says I'm a great American, Sean.
Thank you.
There you
like my